Selamat pagi semua. Eh, Hari ini Departemen Antropologi senang sekali eh, bisa menyelenggarakan dan hadir tamu dari visiting professor dari University of British Columbia. Eh, Dalam kesempatan ini, sebelum saya memulai acara dan mengantarkan diskusi kita dan eh, percakapan kita mengenai ecosystem restoration, saya ingin mengundang dulu Wakil Dekan 1 sebagai perwakilan fakultas untuk membuka acara sebagai perwakilan Ibu Dekan, karena Ibu Dekan ada rapat untuk bisa menyambut tamu-tamu dan juga visiting professor kita yang rencananya dalam ke depan akan melanjutkan kerja-kerja kolaborasi bersama fakultas. Untuk kesempatannya saya persilakan Ibu Henry sebagai Wakil Dekan 1 untuk bisa hadir ke depan untuk membuka. Saya persilakan dulu.
Selamat pagi, Bapak dan Ibu. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Kita bergabung, ada jutaan orang sepertinya ya. Berapa banyak yang bergabung lewat ruang Zoom? Oke. Bapak dan Ibu, selamat datang di kampus FISIP UI, kampus yang sudah punya banyak cerita dan punya banyak sejarah gitu ya. Semoga apa yang dilakukan hari ini juga menjadi bagian dari kesejarahan UI yang membangun bangsa. Yang saya hormati para narasumber, tamu undangan, perwakilan NGO, institusi mitra, dan juga para dosen, para mahasiswa, para peneliti, semua hadirin yang hadir dalam ruang offline maupun online. Atas nama Fakultas Ilmu Sosial Ilmu Politik mewakili Ibu Dekan, saya Hendriani, Wakil Dekan Bidang Akademik, mengucapkan selamat datang dan apresiasi yang sangat-sangat tinggi kepada seluruh pihak yang telah menyiapkan, melaksanakan, telah hadir dalam berbagai kegiatan, terutama pada kegiatan seminar pagi ini tentang landscape and seascape. Saya begitu baca tuh yang keren banget sih, gitu kan, istilahnya keren banget, dan begitu mendengarkan berbagai aktivitas yang sudah dilakukan oleh teman-teman ini sejak hari Senin, rasa optimisme bahwa kita bisa berperan ya dalam perubahan tidak hanya di Indonesia tapi juga di dunia gitu untuk menyelamatkan bumi tempat kita hidup ini gitu. Seminar ini merupakan puncak dari rangkaian acara visiting professor program yang merupakan kolaborasi antara antropologi UI dengan UBC, terutama dengan Faculty of Forestry and Environment Stewardship, yang sebetulnya persiapannya sudah dilakukan lama, kerjasamanya sudah dilakukan sejak lama. Jadi ini adalah bagian dari berbagai aktivitas melaksanakan ide-ide bersama ini. Dalam berbagai kesempatan dalam minggu ini, saya juga mendengar teman-teman sudah berbicara atau mendiskusikan banyak tentang biodiversity conservation, indigenous communities, sampai pagi ini pun kita masih terus menekankan pentingnya pendekatan transdisiplin dalam berbagai tantangan lingkungan dan kondisi sosial, ekonomi, politik saat ini. Kami melihat bahwa kolaborasi ini adalah wujud nyata komitmen bersama. Betul bahwa ini adalah dilakukan di ruang AC gitu ya, diskusi-diskusi, tetapi ini kan sebetulnya merupakan sebuah cara untuk saling bertukar pikiran, bertukar pengalaman, dan bertukar rencana aksi berikutnya seperti apa, sehingga akhirnya akan menjadi sebuah kesempatan untuk mengembangkan bersama. Nah, Bapak dan Ibu, Mbak dan Mas, teman-teman semua, kami sungguh berharap bahwa apa yang sudah dilakukan oleh teman-teman antropologi UI dan UBC ini menjadi sesuatu yang tidak hanya berhenti dalam ruangan ini, tetapi juga kemudian menular gitu ya, diteruskan dalam jejaring yang kita miliki, tidak hanya di lingkungan akademik, di lingkungan masyarakat adat, di komunitas-komunitas lokal, tapi juga kemudian di pemerintah dan bahkan di sektor swasta. Mungkin saya mau cerita sedikit, kebetulan dalam minggu lalu kami di FISIP itu tiba-tiba dikontak oleh seseorang yang mengatakan bahwa ini ada sebuah perusahaan dari Inggris yang mau bangun kapal di Indonesia gitu kan ya. Jadi mereka butuh kontak dengan orang-orang yang punya penelitian yang berhubungan dengan nelayan. Nah, dalam pertemuan awal yang banyak hadir itu adalah teman-teman dari Fakultas Teknik. Karena kan membangun kapal gitu kan ya, jadi Fakultas Teknik tuh lebih ngerasa bahwa ini expertise mereka. Sementara teman-teman FISIP, kita mau dengerin dulu apa yang menjadi tujuan kalian, apa yang kemudian akan menjadi dampak bagi masyarakat lokal gitu kan. Dan di akhir pertemuan teman-teman dari FISIP bilang bahwa kita mau bantu, tetapi kami nggak mau menjadi sebuah alat stempel justifikasi dari aktivitas yang mungkin bisa kemudian merugikan komunitas nelayan yang ada gitu kan. Jadi penting buat keberadaan ilmu sosial humaniora, terutama juga teman-teman antropologi ini untuk terus menjadi juga apa ya, moral kompas mungkin bisa kita katakan begitu, yang selalu menyuarakan kepentingan-kepentingan masyarakat, kepentingan-kepentingan masyarakat lokal, masyarakat indigenous gitu ya, marginalized group, community, supaya tidak kemudian lenyap atau dilenyapkan dalam perkembangan yang makin komersial saat ini. Mungkin saya bisa mendapatkan seperti itu. Jadi kami bangga sekali teman-teman antrop melakukan kegiatan ini bersama dengan teman-teman dari UBC, dan semoga betul-betul apa yang kita lakukan bermanfaat buat kita sebagai bangsa, negara, dan bagian dari masyarakat dunia. Terima kasih, selamat menikmati seminar hari ini, Bapak dan Ibu.
Okay, since this is a visiting professor as an international program, I think I would like to start in English now. So informally, I talk casually in Indonesia, but I think we should start now in English. So to cut it short, I think I would like to invite all the speakers to the in front of the auditorium to take your seat. Professor Jeff Sayer and Dr. Annie Clintuni from University of British Columbia. Pak Yatna, Professor Yatna from Faculty of Natural Science and also Director of the Research Center on Climate Change RCCC UI, and Bu Dian. I think I would like to invite you to go, untuk bisa hadir dan duduk di depan. So please go invite, and regarding the process, I will explain you about the itinerary. You can go from there and also from here. Okay, so before we start, first of all, I would like to say welcome, good morning everyone. Selamat datang di acara hari ini. And it is my honor to open this public talks with the title Landscape and Seascape, OECM and Restorations of the Ecosystems, a Transdisciplinary Perspective. For you who are not quite familiar with the term OECM, because this is the term in conservation science and also the talks in the issue of conservation. The OECM is the Other Effective Conservation Measure. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pak Jeff. Other Effective Conservation Measure. This is organized through the collaborations between the Department of Anthropology, Universitas Indonesia, and the Faculty of Forestry and Environmental Stewardship, University British Columbia. The whole event this week is supported by the schemes of World Class University Insight program. Before we start, and before I introduce all the participants, I think there is several story first from our department regarding the why the Department of Anthropology uh, hosting the event with this kind of title, because maybe for all of you this is quite, especially for the student, for the one who are not quite familiar with what we are engaging with. In a long period of time, this forum is not a standalone occasion actually. This is a continuation of our department initiative and also enduring commitment to engage with public issues, and particularly through the lens and the issue of two approach that really developed strongly in our department, that is human ecology and also recently political ecology, which has grown into one of the strong intellectual current in our department. And this is also partly a response as well to the public issues like environmental degradations, climate crisis, biodiversity crisis that we are facing now. And for, I think in the last 10 to 15 years, my teacher, Professor Yunita, Prof. Yatna, I assume know, and also Prof. Chair, Bu Yunita Winarto is hand over the job to the next generations to promote what we call the public anthropology, and this kind of discussion is part of that initiative. So we have engaged with this kind of issue, then we engage it with academic and rigorous intellectual trajectory. So we are just continuing the traditions, and now it rests on our shoulders from our teacher, just like Prof. Parsudi Suparlan, including late father of Budi Hartono, and also the last one is, I assume for people from NGO quite know well, is the late Dr. Iwan Citra Jaya, who are really influential in developing the interactions between anthropology and ecological science and in the initiative of conservation. So this session and this public talk is, these questions before us today sits at the heart of the most pressing challenge of our time, especially with the issues of how do we conserve and restore ecosystem in the landscapes and seascapes that are also a place where people live, work, and also continue their life. The concept of OECM, other effective area-based conservation measure, I think has emerged precisely because conservation cannot be confined only to the protected area, but also related with other area, forest, peatland, coastal zone, and also communities, livelihoods, of course, woven into and shaped by the decision across the forestry, fisheries, and agriculture. So, taking these considerations, I think it require us to move beyond disciplinary silos. That's the reasons why so many people from other background here today, and we are really lucky, we are really fortunate to have the chance to invite Professor Jeff Sayer from University of British Columbia and Dr. Agni Clintuni from UBC. Both are internationally recognized for their decades of work on the integrated landscape approach, the conservation governance, the human dimensions of forest and biodiversity management. And they will share with us the talk, the titles, Framing Multidisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Landscape and Seascape, OECM Restorations of the Ecosystems. And we will have also participant and speaker from the private sector. We are really lucky to have Budian here now this morning. I know Budian in the past 5 to 7 years in collaborating with April Group in supporting the social and impact of the conservation and also production plantation forests. We will have a case study in the case of Kampar Peninsula in Riau, how to produce a kind of conservation goals by integrating production forests and also ecosystem restorations. We will have a really interesting presentations on this. And of course, the last but not least, Prof. Yatna in UI is the one, I think, who is really the most People count what Prof. Yatna, everything's related with conservation. And Prof. Yatna will share the issues of the recently the term of areal preservasi in this new law of Undang-Undang 32 that now is becoming also public debates and discussions. We are really looking forward to see how the issue of the social aspect and also how it linked with the conservation will be shared by Professor Yatna today. So we will have 3 sessions of talk. So the sequence it will start by Professor Jeff Sayer together with Dr. Agni, and the next one Ibu Dian, and the last one I hope Prof. Yatna can share, and also some kind of maybe try to see the link between the session as well. So the format would be 30 minutes presentations. It's up to you if you are really comfortable to talk in your seat. If you are interested to present in this podium, that would be welcome. So it's up to you as convenient as you feel in presenting the session. It would be 30 minutes. I hope that will be enough. If there is an extension, I think maximum 45, because we are expecting a lot of discussions and the inputs, and also productive discussions during the Q&A. So that's the format of the session. So without further ado, I think I would like to start the first session, and I will give the session to Prof. Jeff and Dr. Agni to share the presentation. The floor is yours. Thanks. No, it's okay. Yeah.
It's just that there's Zoom as well, isn't it? Can they hear? Okay, that's fine. So we can go around if you want to be there, or something, because there's
and we will also have another mic if you want to. If you are really more engaging, the lecture.
I will just start.
So good morning, everybody, and it's very nice to be here and nice to meet some old friends and hopefully make some new friends. So Intu and I have developed this thing about transdisciplinary science, and that translates itself into the presentations we make. So Intu is an anthropologist and an artist, and I'm a humble biologist. So when we make presentations, we try and weave together the stories from those two things. And what we're going to try and weave together today is work that we've been doing for many years on the Convention on Biological Diversity and restoration, and the emergence of the Kunming-Montreal framework for the future of conservation, and all the sort of associated things, but particularly the concept of other effective area-based conservation measures. So I hope you all sort of know something about those things. And I have to be honest right from the beginning that we followed the development of the Kunming-Montreal framework closely. We were critical of it, and when it was published, or accepted by the conference in Montreal, we published ourselves a critique of it. We said that the framework was focused too much on expanding the area of protection and not enough on the quality of protection, the effectiveness of protection, and the targeting of conservation priorities in that protection. So actually at the time we published one general paper on that subject, and a second paper which is still not actually out. It was supposed to be out for this meeting now, but it's still stuck in Cambridge University Press, in which we discussed in detail the problems of trying to conserve 30% of Indonesia. You know, there's a lot of people out there and they're all desperate for land, and we think the priority is to improve the quality of the existing protected areas and fine-tune the system, and not to just make it bigger and less effective unless you can give it a lot more resources. And we simply think that civil society in Indonesia is not going to be ready for putting 30% or whatever into total protection. There are too many other demands on land. So we've got some slides. Intu's going to introduce those and say a few things.
I can stay here. Maybe you can take this one, Jeff, and then so we can both have this mic, yeah? Because it's easier probably. So I'd like to thank everyone who comes. I know everybody is so busy, and this is the effort of our transdisciplinary approach. Basically, we invite a lot of our friends we could say, including Pak Yatna and Ibu Dian, and from different organizations, including researchers, NGOs, private sector, and so on. And I'm glad that I even see younger generation who being interviewed by LPDP to go to universities all over the world. And the problem is when they get interviewed, the interviewer doesn't really think about transdisciplinary, right? So I see behind here one of the potential student coming to UBC, just graduated from high school. And it's true that the young people don't really know yet what they basically want to do in the future, right? But everybody so in Indonesia said to me, it's very linear, you have to be very linear if you want to develop your career. And we've been talking about transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approach with Pak Yatna especially, because for several years we've been working with MIPA, colleagues who are interested in conservation because our goal is conservation. But I have a background in anthropology and I use visual anthropology with different types of techniques, using visual techniques, films, video films, how do you call it, oral tradition, storytelling, and so on. So here we try to sort of give an idea of what actually are we doing, all this conservation for what and for who, by using this transdisciplinary approach. Yeah. Next.
So, as I said in my introductory remarks, I've been involved in this for a long time. And conservation is always a very complex thing. You're trying to change the behavior of a large number of people with different objectives, different lives, different ways of understanding things. You're trying to change their behavior in a way that will result in better stewardship of natural resources and nature in general. So the first book there on the left is something we wrote quite a long time ago. It's up for renewal now. We have to revise it, but it basically explains how you can apply science to the real-world situations of conservation. And it argues that you need not only diversity of scientists, but you need to engage civil society, practitioners in the field, and local populations in causing the changes to happen that will be needed if we're going to have diverse natural resources in the future. And the second book on the right is an account of how that's been done in quite a few places. And again, of the difficulties that we're facing getting this to happen. You know, we seem to naturally want to work in these silos that we create of institutions and university departments, and yet we know that we can't solve the problems by working within those silos. And we can't change the behavior of civil society simply by sending them papers from journals. We have to engage them in the discussion and listen to them. And particularly in our case, we're very interested in the communities who live in the places where conservation has to happen, and how you can make it more probable that they will align themselves with the sorts of futures that will retain biodiversity. And that's the subject of this paper that will come out imminently on particular problems of Eastern Indonesia and Wallacea. So this was work that was done together with Pak Yatna, lots of other people from different NGOs, Fauna and Flora International, etc. So we see this as a process where all the concerned people experiment and learn together and adapt their behavior and negotiate continuously to get outcomes that are good for nature.
Next. So this is, I don't know if anybody knows what this is, the tree, the forest. Kemiri, candle nut. So the idea is that to show that even productive landscapes, agroforestry or other things could have biodiversity, right? So we were talking about other effective conservation measures because we are sort of committed by 2030, well, Indonesia now it's by 2045 to preserve or to conserve the 30%, as Pak Jeff said. And actually, it's not just national parks, right? So this is also to make people think about how this ecological function and landscape governance of the agroforestry is very important. And this is basically the candle nut plantations or agroforest area in Sulawesi, which still have kingfisher. Yeah.
chose Sulawesi because of Pat Yatner's engagement with that island, so we can hear from him about it as well. But basically, what is obvious now is that a very large proportion of the biodiversity in Indonesia, but in many other countries as well, lives outside protected areas and lives in areas that are managed for other purposes. So we've got a few slides here of interesting wildlife, birds because they're easier to photograph, that live in areas that people are managing for crops, in this case Kemiri. And we've got others, but we have to influence the management of those areas, get them managed better, and that's where the OECMs come in. If they get managed better, if we can have enough science to know that they're getting managed better and enough science to detect any changes and intervene in the system to correct any negative changes, then they could be added to the inventory of areas that are classed as OECMs, and that could be counted as a contribution to the Kunming-Montreal goals. Of course, if you simply draw lines on maps and announce that they are protected areas, but you don't do anything and you don't have science to monitor them, then the whole thing's a bit useless, and it will mean you'll appear to have 30%, but you won't have made any gains in conservation. So we're concerned that this thing is translated into real outcomes on the ground for biodiversity and ecosystem services.
Next. So I guess, do everybody knows that one? Indonesia is very well known as a spice islands, right? And again, we talk a lot about Wallacea in Indonesia, all the key biodiversity areas. Pala, yeah, that's true. Nutmeg, and the other one underneath? Cengkeh, yeah, cloves. So this is also the nutmeg. So again, we work a lot in the Maluku Islands because it's a spice islands, right? So there are so many areas that are potentially could be OECM, right? And these are very rich in biodiversity as well, not just being productive for the people, but also for the wildlife, basically.
So this is a photograph taken in a forest near to the village of Masihulan in North Seram, a place we've been visiting regularly now for over a decade and we want to stay involved with. But it's interesting because the forests are entirely composed of useful trees that produce spices that are sold on the world market for a lot of money. But of the 23 species of endemic birds on the island of Seram, 20 occur in these forests around this village. Now, I'm going back to birds all the time because we have lots of data on birds, but there are also all the other things, the plants and mammals that exist in these areas also persist in agroforests. So what we loosely define as agroforests are a really important part of this whole movement forward.
And I see that there are some Burung Indonesia colleagues, ex-Indonesia, Burung Indonesia and Burung Indonesia colleagues in the room. So we do work a lot with birds, yeah, as an indicator of the condition of the forest, right? Next. So this is in Malinau. So Malinau is very dear to us because it's Malinau Research Forest, right? The C4, Center International for Forestry Research. I see the C4 colleagues are here as well. Thank you for coming so far from so far away. So I work with the Punan hunter-gatherers group. So the area where they live, Tubu, up in the mountain, it's like 4 days of canoeing when I do my research, 30 years ago, wow, 25 years ago. And now they have a kecamatan, so they have a road, but it's still very bad condition because it's a logging road, right? It's not asphalted, but they have the idea of doing inoculation of gaharu because it brings a lot of money for them, right? It's a lot of income from gaharu, Aquilaria species. So it's the value chain is very important. One of my students is interested in the study of the value chain of this gaharu. Per kilo, really good quality could be more than 50 million, I think, yeah. Mbak Nining and Mbak Ani maybe know better from C4. It's pretty high, and so for the Punan is a very important income, right? And they still have the biodiversity in those areas that are mixed agroforestry normally.
So just two things on this picture. The first is that we've been involved here for a long time, and it started as being the area for the C4 research forest given by the government of Indonesia, and now through successive programs we've kept involved. But the interesting thing is that the problems that we saw in this area 30 years ago turn out not to be the real causes of long-term change. We keep getting surprises and different things come along. For instance, the new capital city, we didn't really anticipate that would go into the area. So you have to be continuously involved heavily involved with local people, local government, and to learn what's going on and to be at the table when decisions are made. And this is one area where we've succeeded in doing that.
Next. Next. Yes. So this is an area where we work with the actually with Burung Indonesia colleagues in the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, where these are some of the key biodiversity areas in Wallacea region. So in Seram and in Buano Island, this is the bird Pak Jeff's favorite. It's a little tiny island and one island endemic, the Buano monarch. Hey Jeff, do you want to say something?
Well, this is the black-chinned monarch. It's one of the rarest birds in the world. There are less than 200 left on the planet. If this was in Canada or England, you could mobilize millions to conserve it. But here, it's really difficult to conserve it. If you try and get the local people on the island to understand why it should be conserved, they can't understand that at all, because you can't eat it, it doesn't sing very well, it's not very colorful. So taking the land out of production for the benefit of this bird is a challenge, which we have not met yet. And that's a challenge that you keep finding everywhere, that for local people, these global values don't mean very much. You have to make those global values translate into some local value.
So we sent a group of people with the help of the biologist from the RER, Prayitno, who's at this left corner. He's the ornithologist, a bird specialist who works in the RER, in the Restorasi Ecosystem Riau. So he helped us with the UBC team and Unpati team from Ambon, and they spent several weeks in Buano to be able to just to get one photo of the bird. It was so difficult to get the bird. Next. So this is also this is the island actually. The one on the top is the Buano Island, and the one underneath is Sawai. So we work in two sites, in North Seram and in Buano Island, which is on the western side of the island. So we're just showing a little some of the papers that came out from some of the studies, so people might be able to download them. Normally it's all open access.
You'll see there are lots of authors on all these papers. We try and involve people from all the institutions that are concerned, and to build a sort of community of practitioners who are interested in this integrated science. Yeah, so we focus the last decade actually, we focus a lot on Wallacea because of this high endemicity in the area. Next. We would like to show this, because this key biodiversity area, we work with colleagues from Burung Indonesia to identify some of this key biodiversity area. As you see, these are areas that are very important key biodiversity area. It's not necessarily national parks, but it's really high in biodiversity, basically, right? Just one example is that Morowali Wildlife Reserve is one of the most important protected areas in the whole of Wallacea, and it has 11 nickel smelters operating, each with a workforce of around 1,000 people inside that area. So there are incredible pressures building, and to try and really conserve the unique biodiversity of Wallacea is an amazing challenge at the moment. Next. So this one is in Bali, in Batu Karu. This is our backyard basically, because our house is in Batu Karu mountain, and some of the colleagues that we always try to meet once a year, a landscape workshop, we exchange ideas and we write our findings together and so on and so forth. This is important because it's a sacred forest, and this sacred forest also still, because of the sacredness, people still believe in taboo and the adat system. So then it's one of the way to basically conserve the biodiversity, right? Because people are still very afraid if you do something bad, then you have bad karma or bad things happening to you several generations, right? So the future of conservation throughout many of these areas, not only in Indonesia but elsewhere, is to build on what local people are already doing, the initiatives that appeal to them, that they understand. And this is one, and it's a really nice area, and it's got a very high diversity of all sorts of things, birds, trees, mammals.
Next. So the other one that I go quite regularly since the 1980s is the Badui communities, right? It's very close to us, but they have also their hutan sakral, the sacred forest, and in this area as well. I think it's a good way to be able to do this conservation. The OECM, I think this could be one of the potential areas that we should think about, of these adat areas, basically.
And Pat Yatner's had a research station nearby for many years now, so there's a lot of knowledge
Yeah,
of
the Halimau.
biodiversity.
Next. So one of the area where we work for also with elaboration of the private sector is this RER in the Restorasi Ecosystem Riau. So we send students there every year for the last few years, and they stay with the communities and understanding the importance of the economic value for communities, but also the biodiversity in that area.
So one of the most promising things we've observed in Indonesia in recent years is that acknowledging that the Ministry of Forestry and the National Parks people struggle to conserve all the areas that they have been allocated, and they struggle in the face of pressure from local government and local people who want to use that land for other things. There are now a number of companies, including notably April, who have taken these major steps to conserve almost 50% of their entire concession, which is incredibly biodiverse. It's got 350 species of birds, I think. I'm sure Ibu Dayam will tell us about it in a minute,
Yes,
but this is one of the bright spots of conservation in Indonesia at the moment. Initiatives taken by big companies, several of them, but April's notable, to conserve things on land that they control.
Yeah, so we need to think about the concession conservasi. Yeah, concession conservation are actually potentially very good area for OECM. Next. And one of the other company we're trying to engage with is Sumitomo Forestry. So they work in West Kalimantan. This is in Kuburaya. Next. I thought I had another 4 of them, but anyway, so with the company as well, with Sumitomo are interested also in the mangrove restoration, and we have also some activities as well with student who is in Halmahera and the university over there in Tobelo.
A very intensely managed forest, agroforest,
Yeah.
but full of endemic species. It's really a remarkable place in the middle of Halmahera.
Several species of maleo birds.
In the next slide.
There.
Yeah.
Some of the, there's a bird of paradise
That's
as well.
the 12-wired bird of paradise that Wallace became a bit famous
Yeah,
for.
the Halmahera.
And these are endemic maleo birds that nest in quite densely settled areas along the coast of Halmahera.
Yeah, so Burung Indonesia colleagues are also working actively there. Next. In Gorontalo is the same with some of the Burung Indonesia colleagues. They also have quite productive areas with communities and farmers doing shifting cultivation. They have a lot of other activities in the area, but there are biodiversity in those areas.
So Swidden agriculture was always seen as the biggest threat to forests, and it is in a sense, but 2 things are happening. First is that long-term Swidden agriculture is a cycle through different age classes of vegetation, and it can be very rich in different species of plants and animals. And also it's disappearing. People don't want to live by Swidden agriculture, so people are getting jobs. When oil palm expands, that's sort of seen as a very bad thing, but people abandon shifting agriculture and get jobs in oil palm estates, and you have many more people on a small area of land, which ultimately is good for forests.
Next. So these last landscapes that we're working in now is the coastal region. So we're going into the mangrove area now, and you can see Erdi in the middle. He's there. So next, I wanted to show a little bit about the efforts that WWF and other colleagues, CTC and Rekam, RARE, and other colleagues who are working on together on the potential OECM on the coastal area. Yeah, and Pak Yatna will talk more about terrestrial, but these are a lot of the areas that I think will be very important for OECM. Next.
So they're just candidate sites. There are no terrestrial OECMs, but potentially there are huge numbers. But again, we need the institutions and the scientists and everybody else who's behind that, the local people, to get behind that movement and to make it happen in practice.
Next. So we try to understand all these different OECM and the MPAs, right? For potentially where are the areas that could be part of this OECM.
We wanted just to put in a word for forestry, industrial logging, which is seen as bad. But this is an industrially logged forest in Central Africa, where we have a PhD student right now. That is an incredibly rich forest, and if people are certified by FSC and obey all the rules, then those forests have a major role to play in conservation and would qualify as OECMs. And those of you who follow FSC will know that there is now an emerging interest in certified landscapes, and one of the conditions to be certified would be that 50% of the landscape remains under natural vegetation, and there are quite a lot of companies who are interested in doing that, and that would be a huge gain for conservation if that could be transformed into a really operational program.
Next. So in Africa, we also work in Africa in the tropical parts of Africa, but there's also a lot of interest from the different countries in the dry land, right? And they are very productive areas. Like shea tree gives a lot of income for Burkina Faso. So, but these areas also have biodiversity, which people sometimes don't think about. You know?
We put this in because it appeals to me. One of the first jobs I ever had was in Africa, in this very dry land along the edge of the Sahara. And you'll have gathered now that I'm interested in birds. So I was interested in the fact that all the birds migrating from Europe and from the Palearctic arrived here in September, October each year. And I documented that and wrote papers about that. Now, of course, there's been huge degradation of the environment here, and massive degradation. So the conservation of the birds that nest in the Arctic and northern Palearctic and Europe is totally dependent on maintaining things here. So again, you need science to make all these links and understand the impact of changes in one place on events or biodiversity in another place. And
Next.
suddenly people have started citing my work from almost 50 years ago.
I don't know if anybody knows what this tree is. This is in Sudan. I work in Sudan because after many years working in the tropics, I got asked to work in some of the dryland area in Sudan, Burkina Faso, and Mali. So do anybody knows about this one? This is gum arabic. Next. There. Gum arabic is actually a very important component for a lot of different products, right? It's a mix of for shampoo, for chewing gum, for a lot of different things. So it gives a lot of production, but amazingly, again, like Pak Jeff said, migratory birds pass through there, and you can see different type of hornbills, smaller hornbills than the ones in the tropics, but they do have a lot.
So we're really interested in Indonesia. We really want to talk about Indonesia now, but we can't forget that there are even more serious problems. This is Sudan, where the huge catastrophe is going on at the moment, and huge losses to nature and to the people.
Next. Yeah, this is just to show that the main thing is that the people's behavior are important, right? Because in Sudan, you have the agriculturalists, you have the pastoralist groups who move around with their cattle, but then with the problem of the war, they have refugees coming. So it completely, how do you say, bouleverse? It changed completely the system, the dynamic of the landscape. So we do need to think about all these things, including like climate change and forest fire and things like that could change suddenly the landscapes that we're working in, right? The dynamic will completely change when there's sudden changes in these landscapes. Next. The last one I think is Morocco. I don't know if people knows about this. This product is also very important. Not the goat. Next, you can see there. No? Hints. This is argan oil. Argan oil. Now it's very famous and expensive in Europe, North America. Apparently it's very good for your hair, for your skin, and so on and so forth. So it's very for a lot of products in the sort of very rich countries. So these are also areas that are very important. Biodiversity, not just the wildlife, but also the plants and other native plants and things, right? So next, I think that's the end.
So we've run out of time, but I think what we're trying to say is that these problems do require transdisciplinary science that involves local people and anybody who has an impact on the area, including political deciders. And we would like Indonesia to be a model of where real expertise in doing this sort of stuff on the ground and making it work is developed and can be applied in many other countries of the world where this sort of approach is desperately needed. So we think Indonesia's got off to a pretty good start, and there's some really interesting things happening, which we're going to hear about from Ibu Diane and Pak Yatna, and hopefully from you. And we'd like to sort of build this community of practitioners and scientists who can work together to develop the approaches and to apply them throughout the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Chief. Yeah, that's interesting and fascinating presentations. Introduce us, especially for people from social science and humanities, about the role of transdisciplinary science and sorry, to talk about the issues of restoration ecosystems, and also related with the importance of transdisciplinary approach to understand and to study the issues on this kind of problem that we are facing now. So the next one, I would like to introduce the next presenter. The next session will be Ibu Dian Novarina. She is now the Deputy Director of Stakeholder Engagement and Sustainability in April Group. The academic background, Ibu Dian received her bachelor degree from IPB University and a Master of Science from the International Institute of Geoinformation Science and Earth Observations, Netherlands. And I think not quite long ago, just finishing her doctorate in environmental science at the University of Indonesia, Sekolah Ilmu Lingkungan with Prof. Yatna. and now he also have this current professional engagement as the Vice Chair of Multi-Business Forestry, or APHI, and also the Chairperson of Board of Trustee of the FKKM, and also the Vice Chair of the Conservation, Ecosystem, Social Forestry and Environmental Partnership Commission at the Kadin, Kamar Dagang Industri Indonesia, and also the Vice Chair of Partnership of the Himpunan Ilmu Tanah Indonesia, Supervisory Board member of Himpunan Gambut Indonesia, and many others. So the Department of Anthropology invite Ibu Dian with a reason, try to know and try to engage with the private sector and how it relates what we are now doing in the engagement between different audience of academic research and engagement. Ibu Dian will present his paper on an integrated landscape management of April, how the integration of production and protected approach in Riau. I think that will be all for the introduction from him. I would like to share the floor with Ibu Dian. Bu Dian, the floor is yours.
Selamat pagi, Bapak dan Ibu. Good morning to you all. Good morning to Prof. Jeff Sayer, Mbak Intu, and also Prof. Jatna, and Mas Imam, and Bapak Ibu semua yang saya hormati. Thank you for having me here, for inviting April to have a session to share in this I think it's a very unique seminar, yeah, because I think this is the first time for me to speak about conservation and ecosystem restoration in the anthropology department. Yes, so I will share with you about April's production protection approach in Riau in several landscapes that we operate. Next, please. A brief introduction about April. April stands from Asia Pacific Resources International Limited. It is part of the business group of one of the largest integrated pulp and paper producer. Our main facility is in Riau. Maybe you know our product. When you write your thesis or dissertation, paper 1, it is a product of April. Maaf nggak jualan ya Bapak Ibu ya. Okay, we manage about 1.1 million hectares area and 46% of the area is for conservation and ecosystem restoration. And we manage around 600,000 forest plantation as the source of our log supply to produce pulp, paper, paperboard, tissue, and also viscose rayon. Perhaps you know what viscose is, rayon is? Because yesterday when I was in IPB, Prof. Jeff Pak Yatna Mbak Intu, only 1 or 2 of the students know about rayon. They don't know where rayon come from. It is from eucalyptus, a tree, eucalyptus or acacia, rayon or viscose. Yes, in April, we also have our in-house scientists, more than 270 from different background in our R&D department. I think we are very much supported strongly by our R&D team, and we also collaborate with different universities to strengthen different stream of our operation activities. Next, please. Yes, this is the vision of April. We call it April 2030. We launched April 2030 in November 2020. This was, I think Pak Jeff is very much involved because Prof. Jeff Sayer is, you don't mind, right, if I want to introduce you as our one of our experts to give us advice to develop this vision, April 2030. This is different from different background, including SDG, our own sustainable forest management policy, and also national and international target for greenhouse gas carbon reduction, emission reduction. April 2030 consists of four pillars. It consists of climate positive, thriving landscape, and for social we have inclusive progress, and also for our mill operation we have sustainable growth pillar. However, this morning I will focus on the second pillar, talking about thriving landscape, the green one. Sorry, I was forgotten to bring my pointers. Do you have, Mbak? Nggak apa-apa. Okay, nggak apa-apa. Okay, next, Mbak. Thriving landscape. Yes, after about 6 years now, this is our last achievement for the pillar of thriving landscape, or in bahasa Indonesia we call it landscape yang berkembang. We already spent about 60 million US dollar for our restoration and ecosystem conservation. This is drawn from our commitment to set aside $1 for every ton logs or wood coming to our mill. We set aside $1 to finance conservation and ecosystem restoration activity. We completed 166 hectares for ecosystem restoration in the peatland in Kampar Peninsula, and then we already fulfilled our 1-for-1 commitment. Sorry, I was forgotten to mention that April has 1-for-1 commitment. So every hectare of our plantation forest, we will set aside 1 hectare for conservation. As of now, we have achieved 70% of that commitment. And we also trying our best to improve our productivity in forest plantation, so we don't need to expand our plantation. We hope we can. We don't need to expand our plantation. We will not depend on that because we want to intensify the productivity of our plantation. We call it MAI. Maybe Pak Darmawan and Pak Cahyo from FFI know, forester Pak. FFI, MAI, Bapak Ibu, MAI is mean annual increment. So we try to increase the productivity of the tree to produce fiber. As of now, we able to improve it for 12%. Next, now I will come to the production protection approach. Maybe some of you wonder what is it, what approach is this? Production protection. Production is part of our fiber plantation operation. Fiber plantation operation provide physical, in some of our landscape where we operate, fiber plantation has provide physical buffer from external human threat, which consists of in Rio, especially illegal logging, fire, and also wildlife poaching. And then from fiber plantation, which we use to produce paper, pulp, viscose, we generate revenue to fund, as I mentioned earlier, to fund forest restoration and conservation. And this is supported by the commitment of $1 per ton of production for conservation and ecosystem restoration. And then the finding of some research that we collaborate with some researchers from different universities, the fiber plantation also provide suitable habitat for more than 46 species wildlife, including Sumatran tiger, harimau Sumatra, Malay crestless fireback. This is a kind of bird, walking bird. I forget the local name of this bird. And then sun bear, beruang madu, and 10 other. So when they say that forest plantation is not suitable for as a habitat for some wildlife, apparently it is not true, because we install some camera trap with the sensor panas, heat sensor, and movement sensor. So we were able to collect data based on that camera trap data. Next. This is the visualization of the production protection landscape. This is two landscape in Riau. This is Sumatra Island, Riau, and this is Kampar Peninsula next to Singapore. This is Malacca Strait. Kampar Peninsula. This is another island next to in the eastern coastal of Riau Province, Pulau Padang. So we have two landscape where we apply what we call production protection approach. So this is the yellow one is our forest plantation, and then April concession is this yellow, this one dark yellow, and conservation area within the April concession in the darker green, and then also conservation area managed by the government. This one. This is Taman Nasional Zamrud National Park. This is Waka Marga Satwa, Tasik Besar Serkap, Tasik Belat. Yes, and the brown one is the area belong to other companies. I want to show you how this production protection approach has enabled a connectivity between different conservation area. So this can contribute to what we discussed today about OECM, and also maybe in the term of the government of Indonesia is Kawasan Ekosistem Esensial, KEE, or preservation area. Next, Mbak. See? Now, we can see that coba dibalikin lagi, lalu diinin lagi. See? Lagi, nah, so we can see in the Kampar Peninsula and also in Pulau Padang, all of the green area are connected as a conservation and restoration ecosystem. Yeah, this is the design of this is based on the landscape level high conservation value assessment back in I think 2010 or 2011 by Tropenbos International at that time. Yes, next. Okay, this is when we received the license from the government in Kampar Peninsula, the license is not it was not issued at one time by the government. Okay, next, Mbak, click. Yeah, like for example, this is one of the concession called Pelalawan Estate. Nextnya. This is the estate Meranti. Next. This is estate Serapung. Next. This is estate Tasikbelat. We call it estate as a part of our smaller unit for forest plantation operation. Next. Now this is also Meranti. Next. This is the visual of the Acacia crassicarpa 5-year rotation here from this forest plantation. It is like this. Next. Klik lagi. While this, next to the pit dome, this is pit dome, we can see that maybe it is not very clear, yeah. It is a very low tree at the pit dome because the fertility of the peatland is not so good there. Next. This is mixed pit swamp forest. It is flat, yeah, because it is pit area, ecosystem gambut. Next. And this is riparian wetland, typical at the peatland ecosystem. Ini pasang surut. It has water when during the rainy season, but during the dry season, it is most of them the water are gone. Next. Yes. So this is key activities that we conducted in the conservation and ecosystem restoration area. This is an example of our restoration activity on the peatland area from almost how many years, yeah? 7 years. See this area here, it's become like this. So the growth of tree on the peatland area is not that fast. After 7 years, it is only, see from this area yang kosong, this become like this. This is, we also conducting restoring hydrology system on the peatland area, because in the area before, during the 2000s, there was a lot of illegal logging in this area, log smuggling through Selat Malaka, Malacca Strait to Malaysia at that time. Now we try to restore the hydrology situation by doing canal blocking in some of the illegal canal in the area. Forest patrol, still important. We conduct forest patrol regularly, and then biodiversity monitoring, and then of course community empowerment activities with the local community, because in Kampar Peninsula, in the perimeter of Kampar Peninsula, there are many villages with people living there. Next. This is some of the outcome of our biodiversity monitoring activity. See, this is apa namanya ya nih, Mas Cahyo yang tahu deh, yang ini. Apa cloud leopard ya? Leopard cat ya. Ini burung rangkong. Apa bahasa Inggrisnya tuh ya? Hornbill ya, hornbill. Ini wildlife. Ini tadi yang burung tadi. Ini beberapa. Ini dan juga harimau Sumatera. There is a lot of harimau Sumatera in Kampar Peninsula. So in Kampar Peninsula, biodiversity is rich. Some of them are terancam punah dan termasuk langka ya. And with Prof. Yatna, I learned about how to manage tiger-human conflict in Kampar Peninsula, because the population is growing there. The population of the tiger and the population of human in the landscape. Yes. Next, I think my last slide. Yeah. We also have a collaboration, because I read in the TOR for this seminar. So maybe in the future, Pak Mas Imam, we can collaborate with the University Anthropology Department, because in Kampar Peninsula there is also indigenous people of suku Anak Rawa. Ini di sini di Kabupaten Siak, namanya Kampung Penyengat, Kampung Adat Penyengat. Ada masyarakat adat suku Anak Rawa. Namanya itu they only have satu suku kata gitu namanya. Bo atau ang gitu. Di sini. We have several collaboration with NGOs. Here ini apa ya? Yeah, in Penyengat we have a collaboration with local NGO called Elang and also Yayasan Mitra Insani, and also with Recoftisi for agroforestry program to help local community to have additional benefit from their collaboration with us in small scale forestry operation. Because in Rio, people tend to plant palm oil, as you know, and income from small scale forest plantation is not comparable, cannot be compared to the community income from palm oil. So we try to improve the benefit scheme for the community by establishing an agroforestry program with high economic value products. And we also have, here, Hutan Desa Village Forest Program. Here in the landscape, we collaborate with local NGO also to strengthen the management and governance of the Hutan Desa. Here we have Recof juga ya ini ya. Oh, sorry. Troponbos is here ya. Troponbos kan di Lalangkabung. Di kiri, this one. With Troponbos Indonesia, we also help a community to establish agroforestry. So we hope that they will prefer to use the area for not to convert it into palm oil, because too many palm oil in Rio. Yes, I think that is all for me, and I believe we will need the help and the support from you, from the expert from the universities, to improve our forestry management, landscape approach, and also production protection approach to become better in the future and also give more benefit to the local community. As our chairman says, he said that good business is about what is good for the community. So number one is community, then good for country, for climate, customer, and the company. Only then will it be sustainable. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Budian. Wow, that's really insightful for us, especially from the social and humanity science. I know that when I invite Ibu Dian, we are expecting also students will have so many ideas and expectations about what this private sector will tell about this one, and it's really I assume new for all the students about how the project of the private sector could also contribute to the conservations, and also with the ideas, with the values of ethical and green initiative that they already done. And this is really in a sequential explanation of this whole session. It's really complement each other, because the first one, Prof. Jeff and Mbak Intu explaining more broadly about the OECMs in a comparative sense, and recent debates and literatures on the conservation publications about this issue. And then Ibu Dian explained to us about how the private sector also could contribute to the other effective conservation measure by initiating a landscape level of initiative that also including a multi-stakeholder and multi-land use approach. And the next one will also complement this whole session. The next session will be presented by Prof. Yatna. I assume all of you already know Prof. Yatna, but for the student who are not quite familiar with Prof. Yatna, Prof. Yatna is now a professor from the Fakultas MIPA UI, and actually for the anthropological student here, Prof. Yatna is actually a biological anthropologist, so it's kind of return also to the anthropology in this opportunity. And Prof. Yatna is working on conservation issue in so many institutions. One of them is related with Conservation International for few of postgraduate students who read Celia Law works on wild professions in Togean is Pak Yatna, who actually the one who engaged with Professor Celia. But this next session, Prof. Yatna will share his presentations on the areal preservasi, the terms that already mentioned by Ibu Dian before, the new category in the Undang-Undang. It's not a new category, maybe already discussed before, but now it's becoming part of the mandatory regulations on how to conserve outside the protection area. They call it area preservasi. Prof. Yatna will explain that issues in relations with perhutanan sosial, social forestry, and how it's related with the OECM. Prof. Yatna, without further ado, floor is yours. Jika Pak Yatna mau di situ silakan, mau di sini silakan. Ya, floor is yours, Prof. Yatna.
Terima kasih Mas Iman. Basically, this is really new things, areal preservasi, social forestry, and OECM. And as Pak Imam said, my background is mixed. My biology, my anthropology, my everything's been maybe 45 years to 50 years working in this. So I'm basically almost retired, basically 3 times retired. One when I was telling that I was working with Conservation International, and at the 60, they said, oh, retired 60 years old. All right, so then retired. Then I come back to the campus. And then the professor at the time is 65, but then they extended to 70. So I'm retired at 70. But then President Rector, President University Rector, he said, no, you retire about 80. So I still have 5 more years to be retired. So that's why I have known a lot of people here. So that's why I knew, but Jeff is older than me, so I'm okay here. Since Jeff still can standing, I can stay too, of course, yeah. So this is really very important on the new development on conservation. Although my background is really science, but then when I was in Columbia University as a postdoc, I was working with the anthropology department. But anthropology is not like here in Indonesia. Anthropology is not only social anthropology, but also biological anthropology, which is, talking about human and talking about the environment and talking with many different things. So the next slide. It's difficult to, okay. I was with Mas Cahyo last time, I think 2 months ago, we are hosting the OECM meeting in Dana Ilmu Pengetahuan Indonesia in Jakarta. FFI and UI, University of Kent and others. We developed a 1-day workshop on OECM. So that's why I know that some of those I'm using this slide to make sure that you understand what that really means. Other effective area-based conservation measures, that OECM. I'm talking about, it's too long to talk about the word. So, but basically it was part of the global biodiversity framework. And of course, the target is 30 by 30. And also currently 90% of Indonesia is protected area. So, which means that's about 11% more to get to 30 by 30 in the forest. But the marine, it's just long way to go. Because Indonesia is a maritime country, so it's really hard to get this one. So definition is that OECM is not protected area. That's really important because protected area and it's really government, right? So this OECM is not protected area. Govern and manage individually or group or company or whatever. Effective biodiversity conservation, that's really the key. And conserve ecosystem service and socio-cultural values. That's really the word. Socio-cultural values is very important to do. Next slide. And then what is the social forestry? Yeah, because this is always social forestry. Basically, it's really a formal defined as areas as outside of formal protected areas. So it's really based on these differences, yeah, between protected area and non-protected area. And also it's very important that this national relevance, it's really on what is the protected area and what is not protected area. Because this is community-based performance, governance, and aligned with OECM principle. And I will explain about the more principle of ECM. It's part of the CBD decision, number 14, 8. It's Foundation Law number 32, yeah, number 2009, the Indonesian law about the environment, and so on and so on. So that's really where is social forestry in global initiative. Next slide. So again, I always come across with this. Can social forestry be recognized as an OECM? Right, that's really important because social forestry is already 2009, that the Undang-Undang nomor 32 ya, 32 on environment. While area preservation and OECM is just really basically new. OECM is the global CBD, while area preservation is new law 32, almost similar, 32, 2024. So if you look at the definition, all this definition, for example, what that's really definition on the same, not protected area, as I mentioned before, governance is a very important that can be anybody, non-government, government, organization, community, company, and whatever. And also the boundary has to be defined, boundary has to be mapped, approved by government authorities. So which means that you're not just, right, but has to be approved. Consent from government authorities secure, and also manage to achieve the important biodiversity outcome. They still have to be there, social forestry. Well, if you look at this one, as long as not part of the government, as long as not part of the nature reserve, nature conservation area, national parks, and anything that related to that. So if you see that the area preservation does not change area status of hutan lindung, yeah, APL, and many others. But can be ecological corridors, can be everything, as long as they maintain the ecological, and also the last one is has to be participatory. Communities, involved stakeholders, and so on. But also has to be flexible. It's not like protected area. Protected area has to be managed as there are, of course, certain regulation by the government. Next slide. What the basic principle of area preservation? So, as again, it's not protected area. Support conservation sustainability, manage to support sustainability of conservation activity according with the business parties, and so on and so on. Community welfare, conservation impacts here, does not change the status function of the area. So the status of hutan lindung, there's still hutan konservasi, still the APL. But the core principle, this is very interesting. The core principle is inclusive conservation, involve all parties without exception. I think if you look at the Undang Nomor 5, ya, the Law Number 5, 1990, compared to the Law 32, 2024, this law is really get more complicated, get more inclusiveness, so NGOs can manage the parks, anybody. It's just like the ideal person of the law. But that law, of course, it was so struggle for many years. So it's 34 years to get 35 years to get things done. It was just because ministers sometimes they don't want to change, or the DPR want to change, and I was part of that. It was really difficult. Yeah. Finally, fortunately at the time, the head of the commission, Pak Budi Juwandono, it was very clear enough that we want to do it, and we want to. But of course, there are so many. It's really community-based, right? Allow it community-based, very flexible and adaptive and sustainable. This is the area of preservation. In the government itself, it's still, when I talk to many government, it's still quite basically not a person, but it's something that really need to be done more on the permanenthood. Yeah, that's why I'm going to go about the permanenthood number 9, 2021 about social forestry. Next slide. So the Article 8, the paragraphs, it's paragraph 5. It's that all this preservation can be buffer zone, can be ecology corridor, can be high conservation value, can be conservation area managed by community, or maybe local wisdom protection area. So, as you mentioned, this is really quite different with this one. So, the opportunity for community to manage, the opportunity for company to manage, the opportunity to the NGO to manage areas is available. There's an example of that. For example, buffer zone, the Gunung Leuser National Park, Kerinci, Seblat National Parks. In the ecological corridor, for example, WCS and many other, Sumatran Tiger Corridor in Bukit Barisan, and many others, though, example of that. Next slide. Here is the conservation area in Indonesia because, of course, we had 27 million. If you have 30 by 30, means that we really need to have 40 million. 30% of 120 million of our total forests in Indonesia. Well, 120 is sometimes 20 million, maybe not forest, but it's the forest they call because the boundary. But if you 40 million, which means that we really need about 13 millions. So if you look at that one, the commitment of the Indonesia Volume Net Sink 2030 is about 38 millions. So it means that we can very easy to get 30 by 30, right? 30% of by 2030 for the forest. But not as I mentioned about the marine that go into, we'll discuss more that. Next slide. Social forestry is a very important, so me and Mas Cahyo and many others collaborators, we're trying to understand how the decision-making tools on the social forestry. So how do we working in it to protect biodiversity while maximizing biomass accumulation from forest restoration? The same time is also alleviating poverty. That really means that that's anthropology has to be there, right? How do we alleviating the poverty if there is no social sciences there? That's really important. Next slide. The prioritization of the social forestry is an example of Sumatra that is a bird life. And of course, as I mentioned about that, how to protect and alleviate it and also the restore. That's the key, right? Next slide, because I know that's 30 minutes. So here's proposed area preservation in Indonesia, area preservation. So if you look at that, there's so many protected area plus area preservation across. The social forestry right now about 8.3 million hectare already, right? Out of 12.5 million hectare proposed or expected to propose. How many of areal preservation? It may be about 33 million hectares of areal preservation recognized, right? So this is really the analysis that in 38 million hectares. There's a lot of possible, there's a lot of possible conducting. How do we get 38 million hectares, right? So that's really a lot of job that has to be done. Next slide. And here is areal social forestry. I said, is that how do we get this overlap between social forestry and areal preservation? It's also about social forestry, about 5 million hectares, 5.7 million hectares, right? So and then there is also in the customary law, customary forest areas and social and land covering about 1.8 million hectares. So many, flankings, numbers of it like that. But the fact, it's going to be very difficult to pinpoint which one is really going to be really social forestry. Next slide. The management, as I mentioned about that, it's really regional government, can be province, regency, cities, they can be managing the areal preservation, they can be community, organization, land right holders, individual or groups or companies or whatever. So this is really the opportunity for making this areas preservation. And the co-management is very important, is collaboration. Co-management involving various right holders, multi-sector integrated resources, sharing benefit. This, under the law, we still making what this ministerial decree. So that's still trying to get this one over there. Next slide. So basically, strengthen tenure, community stewardship, cost-effective solution, and so on, so on. That's the social forestry. Next slide. Again, this achievement is also different, right? Number is always number. Number is always changes. And it's in my book, current my books about ethnobiology and konservasi sumber daya hayati. Director General of Social Forestry mentioned, oh, she already have 8.3 million hectares. I said it, and I check it again. Oh yeah, 8.3 million hectares. Achievement 2025. So, but when I check, to everybody it's about 5 point something. So number is always like that, you know. And well, you know, that means because we we have already 62.6 million hectares of that social forestry CO2 equivalents. Wow, it's very, thank you. 10 minutes more, right? Okay, still more. Next slide. The ecosystem services from the forest, Ibu Intu already mentioned many things about the possible. Next slide. But that's really carbon and biodiversity out credit in social forestry or OECM or areal preservation. That's really part of the ecosystem services, right? Whether the carbon or biocredit. I just, we had in the Ministry of Environment, this is not Ministry of Forestry, there's a making a team for biodiversity credit. It's really important. Not in the Ministry of Forestry. Carbon credit in the Ministry of Forestry, it should be Ministry of Environment. Anyway, they just changes, over changes, because originally become one, then split. Now the deputy minister for climate change is in the Ministry of Environment, but they're talking about biodiversity credit. Oh, that's really how complicated in Indonesia anyway. So the one is the social forestry need technical and financial support. Carbon and biodiversity credit as entry point. Lengthy carbon regulation and space for innovation, and biodiversity credit promising but long road ahead. You know, it's talking about biodiversity credit is not easy, especially when we're talking about here in the anthropology department. Next slide. Here is the regulation. Wow. I think there are a lot of, like Ibu Dian come here and oh my God, that's so many. That's why Mas Cahyo and of course anybody here is crazy about carbon project in Indonesia. The process regulation, and recently there is a President Decree number 110 2025. Basically, they changes everything, right? That allow carbon credit at the national parks. No additionality, all discussion, but of course it's going to be very difficult to discuss about more than. But this is very important because the economic carbon that Pak Prabowo, the president, mentioning this is very important for Indonesia. What about biodiversity credit? Well, next slide. Biodiversity credit is more suitable than carbon for area preservation, for maybe social forestry, and also maybe for the others related to. Because here is the differences between limitation, carbon, and biodiversity carbon credit there. Basically, carbon credit, of course, the numbers, you can see that ton per hectare. What is biodiversity? It's not ton per hectare. It's how much is intactness of biodiversity. Intactness is very important. That's why for community it's more easier to sell when you are intact forest, or maybe combining this with the agriculture, with those things, because you cannot, as a biologist for quite 30, 40 years, I don't see any forest that not really human in it or man in it. So that's very difficult. So pinpoint that. Next slide. So our research basically from the forestry and hutan lindung is little bit different, but yes, but it's not so much difference, right? Social forestry and hutan lindung compared to, of course, that companies or plantation. So if you look at that from the social forestry, it's in between and the protected area and with the companies. Species composition in social forest and hutan lindung is also, we can see the differences, but not so much differences. Some tiger there in the social forestry, some other meso predator is also there. Next slide. So what landscape factor for predict biodiversity is very important. If you are an area preservation with connectivity and biomass still there, forest conservation, forest cover still there, remoteness and terrain ruggedness still there, then I think it's almost that by the time they will be maybe similar with the protected areas. Next slide. So this is an example of how that corridor can be playing very important. If you have protected area, areal preservation, social forestry, and OECM together, whatever, they put it together in the one corridor, they enhance, sorry, that vulnerability became vulnerability. So that's really important for next restoring key ecosystem. Next slide. Here is the key message. I think this is very important. The can maintain high mammal diversity, but this strongly depends on the landscape context, as I mentioned about how that closeness to the national park, our protected area, and so on and so on. In forest-dominated landscape, biodiversity level are similar to hutan lindung. How do we get OECM recognition in Indonesia? In modified landscape, reduce habitat quality and connectivity limit forest specialists and threatened species. That really need restoration priorities. Okay, next slide. I think this is just an example of how that area preservation for Sumatra on 11, for example. That can be, if you look at pictures, all these national parks, possible area corridor, preservation, and so on and so on. And FFI, WWF there, and many others. Next slide. This is an example of the potential area preservation for orangutan in East Kalimantan, and also similarly they have protected areas, and then how that the Kayan Mentarang and close to the other protected areas. Next slide. And here is the potential area in Nusa Tenggara, in Rote Island, Rote turtles, conservation in collaboration with WCS and many others. So area preservation basically it's there already, and now how do we look at this one and trying to get everybody recognized by Ministry of Forestry or by government or local government and so on. So basically OECM as per Jeff, yeah, so experience, and I think we were published together on this OECM recently, and then how that social forestry, and then how that as OECM is social forestry, OECM area conservation is similar thing. It's almost there, you know. It's only the law, different approach, but it's almost similar. I think that's really my presentation. The next slide is terima kasih. Thank you.
Okay. So we finished the presentation session. So the next one will be Q&A. But before we go to the Q&A, I think it's really, I would like to take this opportunity to really appreciate and really take this insight from other discipline as a starting point for what we are developing in our departments. And this is really interesting because the issues on conservation is also related with communities, and as just Prof. Yatna mentioned, it's related with socio-cultural values that it's really important in this context. And there is so many things that is related to what we are doing now. So we are also exploring now in our research cluster at the Ruang Hidup and Transformasi Sosial Politik Research Cluster, chaired by Bu Suraya Afif. We are now exploring with two key topics that we will explore more in transdisciplinary context. The first one is related with energy transitions, and the other one is also related with several projects related with conservations in the next future. Me and my colleague here, Sofian Ansori, in the next coming of years will also explore more in the issue of conservation. And the one that Pak Yatna mentioned in the last presentation is really interesting, because now we're also exploring one keyword in our department, and we call it the frontiers debate, because this OECM, areal preservasi, and also perhutanan sosial is not just located in this protected forest, but it's located between location when people will have different aspirations, people will have different existing activities, and also existing cultural, economical, and political attachment within one place, and people from different places aim to conserve biodiversity in that place. What happens and what is the situation? So that's really interesting. So so the next one will be a Q&A. I will have one satu term untuk Q&A session for tiga penanya. I would like to open from the floor first. Mas Erdi, is there any other participant would like to ask? Ya, Ibu yang satu lagi. There's another one. Kita dua dulu. Ya, bisa bahasa Inggris, bisa bahasa Indonesia. Nanti bisa kita lanjutkan dalam bahasa Indonesia juga, tidak apa-apa. So Silakan Mas Irdi.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Erdi. I'm a PhD student from UBC under a supervision from Ibu Into with Prof. Jeffser actually, but with also supervision with Prof. Yatna. But actually we didn't talk a lot about OECM recently, so I will use this opportunity to asking to especially to Prof. Yatna, because I was following OECM in terms of marine initiative here in coastal area, and this also support led by Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries itself, and support by many NGOs to support that in terms of preparing kind of guideline, trying to mapping like Ibu Into also presented previously, and I have a kind of perception that maybe correctly I'm wrong, that in the Ministry of Forestry, the YCM discourse is like less than in the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. We're talking about what is YCM. Many staff in Ministry of Forestry don't know, but doesn't know about that initiative. But Prof. Yatna is, with, for example, with FFI already mainstreaming in the terrestrial thing about ICM. So my question is how to bridge this initiative both in landscape and seascape together and become kind of one vision in Indonesia. Because, for example, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries has their vision. It's like Indonesia, MBA, and OECM 2045, for example. But in terms of in the Ministry of Forestry, what it look like and how to connect this and become one vision of Indonesia and belong to many ministry, especially these two ministry, and support by all of these kind of especially NGOs, academic, private sector, and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mas Irdi. I think we can go to the next questions.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ani. I'm from C4. First of all, I would like to appreciate about the presentation from different panels. It's been very inspiring discussion on the OECM. So I have questions to Prof. Yatna and maybe to Mbak Dian later on, the second one. Prof. Yatna, about the social forestry one, Pak. So as maybe we have been, observing from the field practice of social forestry, the issue of post permit is still a challenge, Pak. The ministerial decree could be published or given to the social forestry group, but then there's no one that will, processing the post permit steps, like including the delineation of forest boundary, their area. So how would, in our project, we even facilitate those process, engaging with the PKPS in the Ministry of Forestry and under the Directorate General Social Forestry. So how would that be defining as OECM, Pak? Because you said that there should clear a delineation, but if the penandaan batas has not been done, so what would be the, is it a process thing that we have to really try to complement, all these things to make the validation of the definition of OECM on that area? So maybe that's something that would appreciate your insight on this. And also to Mbak Dian, if I remember correctly, inside the restorasi ecosystem, there is a social forestry also, right? So how that would be defined if you're kind of say that the OECM in the rare, but there is a social forestry patches managed by local community, would that be like an OECM as one OECM, or yeah? So what would be the kind of describing those, you know, as the valid OECM as well? Thank you.
Terima kasih Bu Ani. I think we can go directly to Payatna. There's two questions for Payatna. The first one is related how to bridge this seascape, landscape, regulations and coordination.
Thank you. You know, to be honest, I have been invited by Minister of Marine Affairs for many different things. Similarly, I was invited by Minister of Forestry, similar things, yeah. But this is really in Indonesia way how to resolve, you know. That's, for example, at the time they asked kesepakatan, ya, agreement between those many protected area has marine affairs, marine site, they still keep by Ministry of Forestry. Those who declare at Ministry of Coastal Area, they can be under Ministry of Marine Affairs. So this is the kesepakatan, ya, agreement between the two ministers. So I think that, for example, one of the project it's in Timor, RD, that really from reef to ridge project. Of course, reef to ridge is very important. That's from coastal into terrestrial. That was really difficult. That was really, is it World Bank or something? Not World Bank, right? The GEF project. GEF project given to Conservation International in the Timor area, East Timor and Timor-Leste and many others. That reef to ridge is very difficult because you have to talk with the Ministry of Forestry, but you have to also talk to the Ministry Marine Affairs. It's very difficult to get into work together. And then let alone the pemerintah daerah. And then East Timor and Timor is the other countries. So it's not easy, but I think it's always they call becoming satgas in Indonesia. So just like here, satgas, many different satgas where everybody can be. So sometimes maybe it's not so strong enough in terms of law system. The second question about dari Bu Ani, from Bu Ani, I talked to Ibu Endah, ya, many times, Bu Dirjen, ya, about this. It's not easy, Bu. The process, of course, they think it look easy, you know, everything, but we talk to sometimes the wall, you know, so many chambers there. But you know, you have to be persistent and consistent. And here is Indonesia way of doing. I think the persistent, you really need to talk. And I think Budian know how to do it. Sometimes NGO is very difficult. Company sometimes it's easier. That's why I think NGO is, maybe I think let Budian talk about that. How that company can really penetrate many others. Because the way they are sometimes more flexible than the NGOs or even academician is a difficult one. Thank you.
Okay, maybe next Budian.
Terima kasih. Thank you Ibu Ani Nawir from C4, Bu. Actually inside RARE, there is no social forestry inside. However, yes, there are 2 hutan desa sharing boundaries with one of the RER company called PT Gemilang Cipta Nusantara, PT GCN. So hutan desa Serapung and hutan desa Segamai. Yes, it is problematic. We also don't understand why the government give a social forestry license in that area, because it is on Pitdombu, the hutan desa area. So basically the community, they cannot do anything on that hutan desa. So okay, when they receive the license from the government, of course they expect that they can have benefit, right, from the hutan desa that they manage. However, because of the pitdom, it is not possible to open hutan desa area, or maybe the potential is to sell carbon, or maybe biodiversity credit. But as Prof. Yatna explained, yeah, it is still long way to go. Yeah, we don't know when it will happen. As April, as a company, we collaborate with the community from Desa Segame and Desa Serapung to help them to, as Prof. Yatna mentioned, or you mentioned about the boundary demarcation process, because that is the first step, yeah, to really identify where is the boundary of the hutan desa. And then we also collaborate with Tropenbos to help us to set up a sekolah lapang, Bu. Sekolah lapang, but not in the hutan desa area, but in the desa area. So they will have alternative income in the desa, because if not, they tend to go to hutan desa to cut trees, because one of their old source of income is to membuat perahu ya, dari kayu. The logs is taken from the hutan desa area, so it is dangerous, right? So that's why we try to collaborate with them through Tropenbos to give them alternative source of income. Then yes, Pak Jatna, it is actually perhutanan sosial is a good concept. However, after the government give the community the license, then that's it. What next? Because the big homework is after receiving the license, right? Not before. They don't have resources to manage the area. They don't have a capacity to develop the social forestry work plan. So this is really an important opportunity for NGO and also for us as a company to collaborate with the community who has the social forestry license to help them to manage the area. And like hutan desa Serapung and Segamai near RER, yes, Pak Jatna, it is a potential for OECM or preservation area, but of course we need to go through the FPIC process, whether they really want to, yes, to utilize the area for OECM. And because the license is for 35 years ya Ibu Ani Nawir ya, so sayang gitu, izinnya lama tapi kan masyarakat nggak tahu buat apa gitu. Punya izin tapi buat apa? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, that's also the question came from many discussions in our classes as well, especially because several of our lecturer also involved in the verifications on the perhutanan sosial, and always the questions is what after securing land rights, and the issues in the governance and also the projections and also the planning, and what is the issues here. Pak Jeff and Pak Itu, do you have something to say with the questions that posed before? No? Prof. Itu? No. Okay. So, okay, yeah. Before I go to the next Q&A, there is a question from the Zoom, and also to Budian and also to Pak Yatna. And also Bu Intu, sorry, one is for Bu Intu. The one is quite technical, but I don't know whether you can answer this specifically, explaining about how can companies maintain a stable pit water level through regulations. he or she said is namely 40 centimeter, how to prevent peatland subsidence or irreversible drying of the peatland. On the other hand, the peraturan LHK, which regulates the water level of 40 centimeter, has been criticized by experts because it is still not sufficient for peat conservation effort. I'm not quite familiar with this issue as well, but that's the questions. The next one to Payatna and Bu Intu. Why are there still money conflicts in the designations of the conservation area? He mentions about the Meratus case, which considered have taken away the issue of the rights to life and customary area in Dayak Meratus. What is the role and the position of indigenous people in this initiative and this term of OECM and other term mentioned like areal preservasi and also other schemes? So yeah, there is two questions. I don't know which one to start first.
Thank you, Mas Imam. Thank you for the question from online, ya, Mas Imam.
Online from Nurfianto Giar.
Yeah.
Pak Giar.
Thank you. So for April, because we manage two different concession function in the Kampar Peninsula. One is for ecosystem restoration. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, for ecosystem restoration, we do the hydrological restoration in the area by blocking the canal. So we try to bring back the water level into the natural level, which is, if possible, it is near to zero, ya, kalau at the ecosystem restoration area. However, inside the forest plantation, you are right. Siapa namanya tanya? Pak Nurfianto, that it is still quite a problem for us because actually for Acacia crassicarpa, the species that we plant on the peat area, actually their optimum growth is on the water level between 60 and 80 centimeter. So yes, the government regulation is 40 centimeter. We try our best to adjust the water level inside our forest plantation area, and also we also work with our R&D team to try to find species, satunya setelah spesies a kind of acacia but more high water tolerant. It is still a process. It is not a quick process, yeah, to find the subspecies that is more high level water level resistant. But we are trying to do our best because the government, based on that regulation, they ask as a company, it is our mandatory to report the water level by installing automatic water level equipment, and it is automatically sending data to the Ministry of Environment. So we cannot berbohong, ya, untuk water level because it automatically send the data, and it is part of our performance evaluation by the ministry. They call it proper gambut. Proper is bahasa Indonesianya penilaian kinerja. Yes, performance evaluation. So yes, 40 centimeter is a big problem that we are working on it. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I hope this is answering the questions. Maybe we can go to the next questions. Pak Yatna, this is about conflict thing that we always talk in the social science. Yep. Silakan Pak Yatna.
Yeah, thank you. It's always this social forestry is good ideas, right? But how do we implement these good ideas? Because if you look at the law number 32, 2009, and then the Minister Decree 9, 2021, it's also talking about, as I mentioned before, they are all really good, many good law, but how do we execute this one? in the field, because it's very far from central government into the local government. How do we implement it? And also from the central and apparatus in the local, still the central government. My experience is always like that, When you're talking about that, here's the basics law, and here is the parliament, and when you're talking about that, the interpretation is always different. Or maybe there's an ego, or it's not easy, but because when they're allowing community to participate in the conservation, participate in the making things, they are still curiga, suspicious on why is it giving to the community, why is it, why is that? So it's not really easy. But I believe there has to be a good example, success story. Of course, within those success story, there's many bad story. It's like in Marathus is mentioned, a lot of bad stories, of course, But that's really happened all the time in many law and many others. So, but it's not easy. But I think just with the OECM, area preservation now, and then social forestry, I think this everything toward the better for communities, Community participate in this kind of, conservation, because conservation cannot be just doing by scientists, academician, or by a government. Cannot, because it's so complex, and also once the community excluded on that, there will be no sustainability for the programs, no sustainability for the landscape or seascape. So that's really the key things. Of course, everybody's in the global, that indigenous people or many others community be involved quite long time already. But in Indonesia, of course, this is the law and regulation. Quite recently, they adopted that in participation on the government effort. I think that's really, maybe Bu Intu is much better.
Yeah, Bu Intu, I see that this question is quite specific. What is the role of Indonesian people in the situations when conflict emerges, but conservation policy is being implemented?
Yeah.
And also, there are so many questions, not just about the role and responsibility, but also about rights. Maybe Bu Intu, you will have so many cases to share.
The things that we talk a lot about this in British Columbia or in Australia, where there are First Nation and Aboriginal communities, the elders are saying it's not just about rights, but the contrary, like you said, where is the responsibilities? Once you get the rights, then you have responsibilities, right? Not just towards their own community, but also towards everybody else, right? So that's also a lot of the talks that we have in our Center for Indigenous Land Stewardship, because as they said, indigenous people are like everybody else. We are also communities like everybody else. We also want to have better livelihoods like everybody else. Of course, we would like to keep our forests, we would like to keep our biodiversity, but we need to have improvement of our livelihoods, as they said, right? And I guess with links to the questions before, what are the roles for us in university or in NGOs? I think that's the most important thing, right? And what can we do to bridge all these needs with the transdisciplinary approach, as Pak Yatna said. So I thought I share a few examples. Could be we have in our village in Bali, the national park Bali Barat asked somebody in our village to help with the Jalak Bali, the Bali starling conservation. So there are people like that in the villages, local champions, local leaders who has initiative, who likes or passionate about biodiversity, for example. So I think it's the role of people like us to link this, people who knows about local way of conservation local animals or wild. And also another one was we went to Arfak Mountain. So there was a project of WWF there about bird-wing butterflies, and then the project left a long time, right? But then we came back there like, it was in the 80s or something. We came back in the 90s, 10 or 15 years after. They're quite successfully doing the bird-winged butterflies because they see that there's potentials in conserving the bird-winged butterflies. They see that there are possibilities to Japanese people like the bird-winged butterflies, but then we have to be able to connect them with CITES, all this regulation about wildlife trades and so on and so forth, right? Because of course those are the different challenges that then you have to face as well, right? But I guess that's the role of academicians and NGOs, I think, because communities, they have initiative normally, they have the ideas what could be good for them. It's just that we need that bridge, like the question again, how do we bridge all these things, right? And I guess that's the role of people like us, and they are the younger generations, for example, they know a lot of things about IT and all those things, and that might be also a way to communicate with younger generation how important is biodiversity, for example, and how important are all these traditions and the other communities who knows a lot of things, but their life is changing too, right? They're not going to be staying the same like the romanticized anthropologists anymore, right? So we are the ones who probably could have role. One other story that is quite interesting is, so I work with the Punan hunter-gatherers group, right? So they're interested in the gaharu that I showed the photo. So there is our head of department in our forest conservation science. He's a specialist of diseases in trees. So I said to him, so maybe you could help us because you study all these diseases and fungus in trees and you want to get rid of them, while us, the Punan, wants to basically get the disease of this gaharu so that they can get money out of it. Maybe you should come with us. So he was so keen. So we're trying to get people like that. And basically we're trying to bridge and facilitate. There might be something that we could help, right? The Punan with inoculating the trees or something like that. So this is just an initial idea that we thought where we could bridge those needs, right? And then we link with people from BRIN who do biochemistry and things like that, right? Because of course the local communities who has all this knowledge and things, but with the changing condition, globalization, development, and so on and so forth, then that's the role that probably we could have in the future, right?
Jeff, do you have something to say?
Not really, except for the fact that it seems to me that in conservation, this idea that you'll ever have a situation where everybody agrees on a certain way forward, that doesn't exist. The reason we have institutions dealing with conservation and NGOs and ministries and laws and things is because it's by the very nature of things that different people want to make use of resources in different ways, different intensities. And so we'll always need these institutions and science to sort of broker the deals and come up with a way forward that meets, on balance, the needs of civil society better than some other. There'll always be losers and always be some people who gain. So there's no ideal permanent solution.
Yes, and I'm thinking about your suggestions in your sessions about this transdisciplinary approach as a way to reduce the gap and discrepancy between the untranslatable issues of the policy and the local interpretations, and also within the different sector within the ministry, and also between the private sector and also the NGO. Sometimes people use a different term for the same meanings and everything. Yeah. And also that also applies, I think, with the last questions about the role of the indigenous communities and the indigenous people, how we also can provide platform. I agree with Intu about the role of the university and also NGO as people who can try to bridge this discrepancy between people, especially with the situations when many terms came from different policy in different level. to the tingkat tapak or to the village levels, and sometimes they will have a same aim but with different terms, and it's problem of translations. I think the one thing that we can start, and sometimes also how to translate as well the ideas from the community level to the higher level, because the areal preservasi will have Pak Yatna already explained before about the AKKM, the areal konservasi kelola masyarakat, and who defined that definition, how we define it, what is the governance of doing it, and everything. So that is the response. I hope I can stimulate other question from my kind of response to the previous Q&A. I would like to open up another Q&A session. So I have the one person, so we have 4 now. Okay, I can start from you, and later on, please introduce your name and institutions. Yeah, let's start from you. Ibu, silakan Bu. Okay. Yeah, I think you can use that. I hope you can record in the video.
All right, my name is Agnes. My background is business anthropology, and I'm currently working with Ibu Dian in April. It's very interesting to have this forum. Thank you so much for hosting it, especially for me personally, coming from anthropology, and I'm learning about conservation because it's part of my work now. And I'm very interested with the presentation from Prof. Jeff and Ibu Intu, and with your extensive field work, perhaps if you have any further insight about navigating the disconnection between people and nature that we kind of see everywhere. And we're talking about conservation. Now there's emerging domain about biocultural diversity, and if we conserve the land, if we conserve the traditional knowledge, but the people itself is sort of disconnected from their biocultural abundance, then how could we navigate that? And we could do so much effort on the conservation and restoration, but people are more leaning into cash economy, and the agriculture is sees as not as much as promising as the fast cash economy. And is there any way that we could do to sort of navigate that? And my second question is to Prof. Yatna. It's very interesting to learn that the social and cultural value is now being considered into the policy, into the national policy, but is there any guideline, or perhaps if you have insight that you could share, how to translate that social and cultural value into sort of target or indicators? Because in conservation, in the natural science, is more what I learned just very recently. It has clearer guideline. The outcome is clear, but the social and cultural value, it's a very gray area, and it's been kind of challenging if we want to propose to integrate that into a clear outcome. Yeah, I think that's all.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we can go to the next questions. And if the questions also more than one, I think we answer first and then go to the next one. Yeah, please, silakan.
Hello, let me introduce myself. My name is Ataya Prasanti. I actually just graduated from high school, and I'm interested in architecture, and after coming to this seminar, I got lots of insight about landscape and forest conservation. So I'm not sure who to give this question to. Maybe all of you can answer this question, but I would like to ask, since Indonesia is rich in biodiversity, especially in trees, and there is like a big potential in how we can use that for local materials for construction. So I would like to know your insight on how can we conserve these trees and also the animals living there, while also using them for building materials and adapting to our climate changes and fulfilling the OECM principles. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I think we have 3 questions. I think we need an answer first. Yeah, but in order to not too much, I think we can answer first, and then I will. So, yeah.
So I guess I try to answer the question about the biocultural part of things. Yeah, we keep on saying it the last 3 days. We keep on saying it's a lifetime question.
Lifetime questions for anthropologists.
Lifetime question for anthropologists to respond. so I guess again it depends on where we are working in, right? Because as you know, we have hundreds of different ethnic groups, different languages. We were talking also about the importance of linguistics and so on in our lives, and because it links to our environment. But I guess that's why at UBC we have this new program now with the indigenous land stewardship, because even land stewardship for different First Nation is completely different from one to the other, right? And especially if you live in the coastal region or up in the mountain or peatlands or mangrove areas, and that's the goal that we're trying to understand better, right? Basically, how do we manage and bridge all these different gaps, basically, and it is very challenging. But I guess the important thing is that with the communities, we have to be able to talk with them about short-term and long-term impact or direct impact, right? And then the long-term impact, because I have the experience with working with several of the tokoh adat or tokoh masyarakat, and they said, well, Mbak Intu, but I'm still here, so it's okay because I'm interested in conserving all these things. But if you ask my son or my grandson, they would have completely different priorities. So communities become so heterogeneous nowadays, everywhere, not just in Indonesia. I work with the Baka Pygmies and Baka Pygmies, and I work with First Nations group, I work with Aboriginal groups in Australia, and then so every single one said to me, we have different priorities now, and so that's why it's becoming more and more challenging, right? And so it takes time, it takes trust to be able to facilitate a lot of these different things. So I don't really have the answer, but we have to be able to sort of, how do you call it? There's a word for it, I forgot at the moment, but it's basically it's just, there's the term that James always used, Jeff, it's to facilitate all these different things. I forgot the word he's using, the broker, no, basically you have to be able to help all these things, right? Because that's probably the role of people like us, and people do understand that businesses is needed, because whether if we want it or not, development is coming, right? Even the Badui communities that are very, very strict adat and things like that, they have strategies, so which is very amazing, and the Kajang communities, the Mentawai, so they all are actually thinking about it, because they know that the demography, the population number is rising, so there are more needs, there are different priorities, and so on and so forth. So culture is not static, right? So culture is gonna adapt to all these changes. And yesterday we talked a lot also about natural disaster, about climate change, about all these different things. So whether we want it or not, we just have to muddling through, right? And Pak Jeff also has another paper on those things. So I guess there's a lot of different things that we wrote about with our colleagues, transdisciplinary approach, and from LSM with NGOs, with university, with communities, we try to capture as well their ideas, basically to be able to share with everybody else about our experience. And we need to understand about that there are different values, relational values, intrinsic values, and all those different kind of values that we talk about in IPBES, the Intergovernment Panel on Biodiversity and Environmental Services. So I was part of that team as well on all these different things, and we talk a lot about all these different things that you've been talking about. How do you bridge between biocultural diversity with conservation and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of things that we've been working on.
Yeah.
Okay, Mbak Agnes, I think this very, I'm gonna start here with about Indonesia and very rich. Everybody talking about Indonesia is very rich. We do have high biodiversity, but at the same time we have high cultural diversities. I heard from the Ministry of Culture, Pak Fadlizon, he said that we have about 1,304 tribes. I don't know if you can one by one, very rich compared, to the others. But that's really the high biodiversity and the cultural diversity. That was really our footprint, our really important for our future, right? But at the same time, if India has all the natural resource of each tribe digitized, already digitalized, Indonesia doesn't have it. So we didn't know, basically, what out of 1,300, how many already know their traditional wisdom. They know the resources. For example, I have my graduate student who study the Batak medicines, right, from the Bataks. There are 5 or 6 different Batak has different time of herbal medicine. So if China has already digitized all the species so that you don't have to be like using robotic to understand each of the plant species content or compose of the chemicals composed. I think if we have digitized already this, it's going to be very good. But unfortunately, we don't have that. We are very rich, that's why. So the other one is also, how do we translate, as Mas Iman said, the translational science now is very popular. Translational science. How do we translate the mention about social forestry, areal preservation, areal preservasi, and OECM? To going down to community, not community, just to government people in the tapak here, in the province. Because that's really difficult for them, right? Then regardless of the community is far, far away. But even to the government, it's really difficult. Because we have too many laws. If you look at that, I just study in US. The law for environmental conservation is very basic. All is very thick. And then you have to learn that, finish. But in Indonesia, you have law for coastal. You have law for forestry. You have law for agriculture. You have to law to any space in Indonesia. So if you can harmonize that law, that can be done. But that's really difficult. So Ibu Santi, is it Santi? Eka Parsanti, right? Can be used that biodiversity for building material? Yes, biodiversity can be using for many different things. Our life is dependent on biodiversity, right? You cannot just only building material. Our medicines, our perfume, security, or everything there from biodiversity. But the problem is that we have not been good translating what that really mean, what that really the purpose of those biodiversity for our community. But at the same time, the community understand that better than us in the cities, right? The cities, they know this, the pill medicine, they don't know what that's the contents. But the community know, this is the plan, this is for this, for stomach problem, for, you have many different things, right? So I think for me is that here is an academy. We need to have a translational science. Translated all this the very difficult thing, government, law, regulation, and so on. Make sure that regulation understand. And Bu Indu is always using comics, using visual, using everything. You don't have to be like wording. We always word. Me too. Also my presentation is a lot of word. But if you have picture, it's very easy to be understood by people.
Okay, Prof. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we go to the next Q&A. Yeah, that's the word one. Yeah, and afterward it's you. Yeah, there's two persons, right?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. I'm Rizka. I'm currently an independent researcher on bioeconomy. I would like to know more about OECM and also area preservasi, especially maybe to Ibu Intu and also Pak Yatna, how it would directly benefit the community and affecting the community because, like, again, it sounds more like more responsibilities to the communities, especially for the community in the customary forest to the customary communities, because like after years, after a long time, they finally get their forest recognized, but then the OECM or area preservasi appointed by the government, do you think is it contradictory, or is it like supporting both like social forestry and OECM goals? I think that's all. Thank you.
Thanks. Next one.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Selen. I'm from Yayasan Konservasi Alam Nusantara, or the Nature Conservancy, Ibu. Thank you so much for the speaker. All of them was a great presentation. So I have two questions here. First one is to Ibu Intu. Can you share a bit about your experience working with the Eastern conservation in Indonesia, especially you had a study about governance challenges. I understand in Eastern of Indonesia they have social structures. For example, Suraja Negeri or Latupati, maybe you have insights on how to connect them with the conservation works. And also the second one to Pak Yatna. Bapak, I work in a fisheries program, Pak. We did a conservation with the fishers. It's called PPBM, or Turf Reserve, Territorial Use of Rights in Fisheries. Yesterday I discussed this with my colleague, is the turf definitions can lie into the OECM or area preservation definitions, because looking at the principles, it's quite similar. We have the area managed by the local ecosystem, we understand the biodiversity, we encourage the local communities to manage it by themselves and giving them rights. And I also want to understand this from your perspective, is it lies into the definitions? Thank you so much.
Okay. Who first? Pak Yatna is quite popular now in this session. Ya, Pak Yatna, silakan Pak. The last one. Yang pertama ya, how communities can get the benefit from these OECM schemes. It looks like more on responsibility. What is about the opportunity that can get? Yeah, maybe Pak Jeff. Pak Jeff have more comparative insight all around the world.
So if I really fully understood the question, it is, what's in it for the communities to get an OECM? And that's exactly what we have written about in this paper, which is imminently going to be published in the next few days or weeks. We argue that, why would they do anything? Why would they forego use of the land in order to conserve something which is of no value to them, but is apparently valued by people in the rest of the world? So we used the model of is it called the PNPM, this trust fund that was established by all the aid agencies, where villages could bid for money to do something, build a road or an irrigation channel or something. And we think that, realistically, those villages are not going to conserve nature. This little bird I showed on the island of Pulau Buanu, why would they go without food or money or education in order to conserve that bird? If you want them to do it, or they don't care whether the birds persist or not, it's other people in the rest of the world, in the rich world mainly, who want these things conserved. So the rich world should put money into funds, and it should be available to compensate those communities for the costs they incur in achieving conservation. Now, I know people have talked about this for years. It's really difficult. These payments for environmental services, they have in general not worked very well. But I think finally, if we're going to conserve things and impose the cost of that on local poor people, we're going to have to make those payment systems work. So.
And I think that the most difficult thing is the skema apa yang kita bisa pakai ya, what kind of scheme can we use, because it is very complicated. Again, as I said, the communities are completely different in Indonesia, from one island to another, one area to another, right? And as Pak Jeff said, they have to see the needs, to do that. Otherwise, it's not gonna work. And I do think we talk a lot about it. But and linked to the other question of my experience, the question was about working in Eastern Indonesia. Is that the thing? Yeah. So in Eastern Indonesia, for example, with Papua or Maluku, of course it's completely different than in Western Indonesia. Just in Western Indonesia, even in Kalimantan, from one Dayak group to another is completely different, right? So what we do is again, as I said, it takes time. You have to get the trust of the communities and things, but we need to understand as well, that they have adat system, the sasi system, right? And they have soa, they have all the different clans and all those different things, the negeri, and even in Ambon or in the Maluku, in Seram, they don't have what we call desa or things like that, right? They have the negeri, they have the Bapak Raja and so on. So we do need to understand all those things. We are not a uniform system actually, ya Pak ya. Jadi, so but as Pak Yatna said, even this translation needs to be, even in our DPR, yeah. A lot of people don't understand when I talk. Sometimes I was in the plane from Papua to Jakarta. When I said that I'm working on conservation, they were like, Pak, itu apa, dia bilang, telur penyu itu enak loh Mbak. So I was like, yes, and well, then that means that you have to be able to explain, if you want to be sustainable in collecting the eggs of the turtle, for example, you might be able to take half and then put back half to the sea, or otherwise it's not going to be sustainable. It's just because of the sustainability, basically the point, right? We have to be able to explain why the sustainability is important, because then you could still get direct impact out of it, basically, right? There's a long term, but they need the direct impact, because when you're still thinking about what you're gonna eat tomorrow, then you can't think about 20 years, right? You think about what are we gonna eat now. So we just have to understand that needs, basically, right? We're talking about temporal and things like that the last few days in our work, and so it is very important. And I use a lot of visual, right? And I use a lot of comic, drawing, painting, sculpture, music, and all these things. And this also been quite used with our colleagues in Canada, with our colleagues with the Indigenous Land Stewardship Program, and then we also do this as well with our colleagues in Australia, in Northern Queensland. So we try to use visualization, we try to do scenarios, doing drawing and basic little things. And if you weren't there yesterday, I have my book on visualizing sustainable landscapes, which you could download from the IUCN website. So it helps a little bit about how do you do in facilitating with different people and different shareholders, stakeholders, rights holders, and so on.
Yeah, I think I first think about this area preservation, area preservasi. It's part of the pengakuan adat sebenarnya. Because that's really important, otherwise that the basic legal of this is important, which means that the government, especially, they recognize the adat, and in the area preservasi, the new law 32/2024. Because dispute before, it's just after Mahkamah Konstitusi and all these things, 35 and many others. How do we get this community to be involved on this and get benefit from what that really, because of course previously the problem of demarcation, boundary, and so on and so on. Once you have already done, then you can submit it and they recognize, the government recognize that you are part of the masyarakat adat or hutan desa or hutan whatever. There's so many hutan kemasyarakatan and so on and so on. I think that was part of the social forestry, which is under the Undang-Undang Nomor 32 2009, and then the Permenhub Nomor 9. Area preservasi is just new law 2024. We don't have that the ministerial decree yet, but it's already very clear now. It's so much clearer than Undang-Undang Nomor 5 1990 or Undang-Undang Nomor 32 2009, because this undang-undang, which is more clearer and also more elaborated than the previous one. The previous one is only maybe 5 pages. This one is really 30 pages more. So that's really so that easy to interpret, and then also once you already, I think the government really wanted not to be 12 million hectares, as I mentioned in the presentation. They really want to have that 12 million hectares by 2030, which means they are pushing. But the thing is that it's not easy because they have to be demarcated. There's no money available or whatever. I think they need for academician and company or many group to be, but that's in the forest, social forestry. But in the marine, that's really different story, right? Okay. They need to have, of course, they're different because the Ministry of Marine Affairs taking charge, and I think they are. If you look at the marine affairs, the forestry is already back to early 1945 something, and even the Dutch times, so we recognized the law and then adapted to the new law in Indonesia. The fisheries basically is different because they don't have marine trade area at the time under the Ministry of Marine Affairs. So they changes into more community based. So earlier than Ministry of Forestry recognized the communities and so on. So the two not parallel historically, but I think it's Ministry of Marine Affairs now. They are more embrace community than Ministry of Forestry. So I think that's really important for more. And then if you look at also in the maritime western part to the eastern part is more tenure right, compared to the western part. So that becoming more complicated when you will go to Papua.
Yes, exactly.
Because it's more than, I don't know, maybe more than half of those Indonesian tribes are in Papua, right? So that's really, it's our homework to understand that Eastern Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yatna. I think the last question is really connected with the title because it ends with the issue on the seascape. And we are also in our department going that way as well. We really need to strategically to also explore more on the seascape because our department is mostly really quite terrestrial ecological anthropology because mostly talk about forests. And that's interesting because Pak Yatna mentioned before that it's really have a different historical and colonial context in previous era. And so the committee already show us the time and the deadline for of these sessions. But before we end these sessions and I give a kind of closing wrap up, I would like to invite, maybe give us a kind of impression, a 1 minute impression, so key takeaway point from each presenter, if you like, if you want to add more or explain more about several things that you don't have any time to explain before. Yeah, Pak Jeff, silakan Pak Jeff.
Well, I think a lot of the issues that have been raised are the result of the fact that human beings are basically greedy. They always want more of whatever it is. And they are not happy when the economy doesn't grow. And they are not prepared to face up to the reality that you can't keep growing the economy and keep consuming and keep having more stuff if you don't change the environment. And so, you know, Eleanor Ostrom's principles from 20, 30, 40 years ago, you have to have rules on what you do with environmental things, and you have to be able to enforce those rules, and you won't have unanimity. Everybody will disagree, so that you try and get the best deal possible for the majority of people in the environment, and that applies to fisheries, everything that we're talking about.
I guess for me, it's we have to always remember whose vision are we talking about. That's I guess that my message. I guess the last few days we've been talking a lot about this. Whose vision are we talking about? Whose restoration are we doing? And what are the different priorities for the different people with whom we work with? Because we always need to think about put yourself in their place, basically. Because then, yeah, we're just there to be able to support, basically. Because the community themselves, they have their own strategy, their own priorities, and so on. So, yeah, and maybe us, we could be the people who basically the facilitating all these different things and help support the sustainability of what's going on in Indonesia.
Yeah. I believe that social conservation is not so much taken very well in Indonesia. So, but the problem of conservation mostly in the social, unfortunately, conflicts and so on and so on. It's not like, well, the bird becoming disappear. It's not by themselves. It's just human factors. But unfortunately, conservation is too heavy toward biology. And so social science is becoming kind of no place in the Ministry of Forestry and when we talk about this with other Director General at the times, with Perhutanan Sosial, he said, I asking, how many anthropologists in your Director General? He said, none. How can you talk about this social forestry without anthropologists? Well, because originally coming from Ministry of Forestry, forests. So this is a real problem, you know, and I think it's really the way now anthropology has to be aggressively, you know. This is really the opportunity, the next generation for that we in Indonesia is different. We are not continental. We are island based. We are marines. We are communities. Everything is very small, not really big, you know. We have 1,300 tribes and so diversity is very important. That's really my small word. Thank you.
Ibu Dian, silakan.
I supported what Prof. Yatna has mentioned because we experienced that yes, our program ecosystem restoration can be successful because actually the social problem is absorbed by the forest plantation outside of the ecosystem restoration. Yes, the human factor is key for conservation, and I really appreciate the initiative of your department, Pak Imam, Mas Imam, to initiate the forum like this. I think this is very important. I think yes, the future of the OECM preservation area, conservation ecosystem restoration area is it should be supported by anthropology, social sciences. If not, they will not be able to. It will not be successful, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Budian. It's really happy to see that today we are transdisciplinary, and in a way, in the discussion, people come from different angles talking about 40 centimeter about peat, water hydrology, and to talk about indigenous role and responsibility. I know I will not do justice to wrap up this really rich discussion in the past 2 hours. But I'm really happy that we can start the discussion, and I am hoping that this will not the last, and I'm hoping it will become another as a milestone of another routine event of our department in collaborating with different institutions and department and different sector as well. We have really fortunate to have Budian here to explain about on the private sectors, about how the initiative on the OECM as well. The issues, the one questions that keep mengganggu saya is the questions about how we navigate different kind of value, different kind of aspirations, and that's exactly the questions about the issues on conservation and the issue, especially the issue on other effective area-based conservation measure, because it's actually located outside the protection area and the place when people from different aspirations, different interests, and with different justification of law and regulations try to manage at the location. So thanks Ibu Dian, Prof. Yatna, Into, Jeff. Please give a big round of applause to all the speakers now. I will close this session. Thank you all for participating in the last session of Bu Into Visiting Professor series of workshop and lecture. Looking forward to collaborate with you, to talk with you after this. You will have an informal, of course, opportunity to talk with all the speakers and also to each other. So thanks again. And I will close this seminar. Thank you. Selamat siang. We will have a kind of ritualized event of giving a gift and souvenir to all the speakers. So I don't know whether it's in UBC we have this kind of thing. But yeah, gimana ininya Faiz? Yeah, I would like to invite all the speakers to go outside this, in front of the screen.